everyone, it's Helen from S&B Deal Hunter. Today we have Alex Nelson with us, an acquisition entrepreneur who acquired a coffee company just last week with 4 retail locations currently. Alex has also started and runs other businesses, so very excited in general to hear Alex's story, and especially with this most recent acquisition. Alex, it's great to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
I guess, Alex, tell us about your background first. How did you get into small businesses, and what led you to acquire these coffee shops recently?
Yeah, so I mean, my background, I was kind of born and raised in Iowa. My wife and I, we actually met like super early on, I think in 8th grade, and we've been together ever since. So we went to high school together, then we went to college together. We both went to like the University of Iowa. I did get like a business degree. I wouldn't say that did a whole lot for me, but I went on, got a job after school, had that for a little bit. But then after I left that company, I found another job where I was doing like online sales and I was working remotely. And then once I kind of started working like remotely, I kind of freed up a ton of time. I ended up getting a second remote job, and I was basically like doing two full. It started off as a part-time job, and it was for this like startup, and that kind of startup ended up growing and kind of taking off, which then it led to a full-time job. So long story short, I was kind of doing 2 jobs, and it allowed me to save up a bunch of cash. I was always interested in business and real estate. I thought I would get more into the real estate game, honestly, than I did on the business side. My brother had started a few tech companies, and I've seen that world, and I didn't want to go raise a ton of capital and kind of be on that side. I thought I'd be real estate, cash flow, that sort of thing. So anyways, we kind of got all that cash stayed up, and then my wife was a teacher. She was looking to leave her job, and she loved like the wedding world. She's looking at being a wedding planner. And then like when we had gotten married, we had seen all these venues, and we talked about building our own, and it's like a big real estate play. So we basically went down that rabbit hole. So that's kind of like where our journey started, is building our wedding venue that we still own and operate. Still not even that long ago. We just opened in 2022. So we kind of went down that, and it was a long, brutal process, honestly, building that out. And then now, since we've gotten that built out, we got managers kind of running it, and we all of a sudden decided to do a few other things. So we opened like a baby boutique. We had 2 children, so that's something my wife was passionate about. And then I got on Twitter and I saw all these people buying companies. So I naturally started skimming Biz Buy Sell just occasionally. I didn't think I'd actually buy anything, but kind of came across this coffee company, and I knew. It didn't have like the name or anything on it, but I could just I connected to the dots basically, and it was one of the shops are near our house. So kind of just wanted to see the numbers more than anything, and then once I saw the numbers, I was like, okay, and then kind of got more and more serious, and 6 months later, here we are. So
Yeah, walk me through, I guess, some of the earlier, you were browsing Biz by Sell. What were some of the businesses, the deals you saw that you liked, or was this one of the first ones you actually like more seriously pursued?
yeah, so I know like we're in like the venue space. I've looked at building other venues, and I realized like I like the hospitality niche, so to say, so to speak. There's like Isaac French and all those guys doing kind of like experiential hospitality is kind of what they're kind of calling it, and it's more like about experiences and creating cool, fun atmosphere. So I knew like something in that realm, and then something we could kind of pair together with like the venue. So it's really just looking like locally and kind of near us just for fun, and just to see. I've gotten numbers on other businesses just to kind of gauge like what they're doing, margins, fun things like that, or I think it's fun. But yeah, I wouldn't say I was super deep into any other kind of businesses, honestly. So I'm not like a searcher. I wasn't like searching super hard, just kind of keeping my eye out. And this was like probably one of the first that like I really like dove deep on. And I kind of knew like right away for some reason that we're going to buy it. So
Wow. That's funny. I love that. I
yeah.
love that you knew right away. What kind of jumped out at you? I guess what led you to believe very early on that, this is a deal that you were gonna pursue?
Yeah, one, like numbers were way better than I thought they were going to be. And two, I mean, I love coffee. I'm a coffee fanatic. We probably drink way too much caffeine in our house. But
Got
I
mine right here.
Yep. There you go. So I just knew like I knew what the shops, which one it was. I just felt kind of right. And like I said, it's kind of like in the hospitality area along with the venue. And I kind of mentioned too, like we looked at building other venues and other sites, and it's just such a long, like drawn out process, and a huge like capital investment just for like one location. And then I see like this company that has four locations, they grew decently fast, and they're doing, more revenue, better EBITDA than like our venue is. And like we're just like stressing over here at this one location. I don't know, just like the idea of like having something I could scale like easier, so to speak, and in some ways was attractive. So yeah, it kind of just I felt like everything just the stars kind of aligned and made sense in a couple different ways.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think anyone who's started a business knows how hard it is to get a business off the ground. So,
That was
seeing,
yeah, that was probably another like huge part of it, like the idea of just buying something that was already running just like seems so nice.
yeah, no, totally. And so what happened next after you sort of came across this listing? Did you, it was a business local to you. Did you go and meet the sellers? Was it a broker deal? Like what sort of happened next?
Yeah, so not a brokered deal.
Oh,
It's interesting. Good and bad in many ways. There's yeah, lots of up and downs, honestly, in this process. Basically, we looked into it. I um kind of got deeper in. I knew I might need to like raise some capital too, which I did end up doing. So I was kind of putting some feelers out there, see if anyone would be interested. Honestly, all from the Twinisphere X world, and people I've met on there. And then once I knew like we were gonna take like a real shot at it, obviously I sent over like an LOI. Ultimately, I think she ended up getting four LOIs like within like the same week, even though it had been listed. I can't remember exactly how long it had been listed for, not super long, but coincidentally kind of all came in at once. She ended up going with someone else for that. And then we were definitely super bummed out. We kind of got emotionally tied to it where we probably shouldn't have, but that's what in real world, I guess, or like what actually happens. I feel like sometimes. So then we missed out on it, and I kept following up basically like every couple days and week and or so, and then she kind of like again no brokers, so like dealing directly with the seller there, was kind of giving me some insight on like these people were acting weird. It was supposed to be an all cash offer. Now they're trying to get financing. And we had a good feeling that it might fall through basically. And she was kind of giving us that indication. So I just kind of kept staying on top of it, staying on top of it. And then, yeah, got the email one day saying, are you guys still looking to buy this? And we're like, yes, definitely. So that was kind of all a whole process, just a lot of emotions like up and down, like thinking like, okay, like we're serious, so we're actually gonna do this to oh, like now it's gone, like it can't even be ours, even if we want it to be. And then yeah, that I think that was like all during March. Got an accepted LOI, probably early April, I believe. And then we just closed like last week, so like July 31st. So what's that, 4 or 5 months or so? And then yeah, it was a long process. After that, I didn't think it was going to be that hard, but it was. Just yeah, I mean, again, long. I can get into the details if you want me to, but
yeah, no, I guess I'd love to hear the details. I guess before even diving in there, how did you guys structure the deal? You said the sellers accepted what they thought was going to be a cash offer. What did you guys end up then settling on? And how did you structure it?
yeah, yep. So we paid pretty much like asking 1.25. It was doing some of the shops. So there's four locations. A couple of them weren't even open all of last year. So that was probably like the riskiest part of the deals. Like some of them weren't like super like weren't there like super long. A couple of them were like existing shops before she took over. So those ones had been coffee shops at least for a long time. But basically 1.25, it was like a um, 2.5x like multiple on the EBITDA. So like 500K was what the four were doing roughly. And so we just we went and got an SBA loan, 10% down, no seller financing, and pretty straightforward from there. So
You mentioned no seller financing. I'm curious, like, how did you guys, how did you, work out sort of like the transition with the seller and, feel good enough about the deal where, the seller was gonna, help you sort of learn the business and transition over to you guys?
yeah, yeah. So no seller financing. I mean, we would have. So what kind of happened too, I guess I didn't mention, like in that the LOI phase, like we did include that in there, and she did say she was like open to that, but then she went with the other offer, or she told us she had the four LOIs. And so then we had like sent like a best and final in, and then that part we dropped the seller financing to try to get it. And then the other one didn't go through. So like we basically went to like our next best offer and we kind of just kept it as is. So that's kind of like why we ex-nate it. She was not local. She moved to Dallas. And she's no longer in Iowa, so she wasn't like in the day to day at all. Like two managers running two shops each. Like yeah, hadn't been here for like 3 years pretty much. Which is good and bad too. There's opportunities there to come in and clean some things up that we thought we could easily do just being local. And then that transition really hasn't been too bad. I mean, it's only been a week, but she's been pretty good. I've been dealing directly with her, like I said, so like nonstop like texting pretty much for like the last like 4 or 5 months on everything. Got everything transferred over, and she's still been there. She's even helped out. She's gone on my Toast account and like helped me set up like the settings and stuff the correct way. So it's worked out that way. Definitely could have been she could have ran and just been gone after
Yeah.
without seller financing holding her in place, but it was kind of like a risk we were willing to take and weren't like super nervous about it. We're kind of the type that can kind of get in there and figure things out ourselves, sort of thing. So
I mean, it's great that they're running two managers who are each running two shops. What was sort of the owner's role in the business? Was she selling because of retirement? And was she already kind of pretty absentee, or what did that look like?
yeah, so she's pretty much like fully absentee at this point. I think she would like meet with the managers, every so often, but nothing like day to day wise. She had owned a few different businesses, and again then moved to Dallas, and then like she had like a HR kind of consulting company that kind of ended up taking off a little bit more, and then um she had some health issues as well, so she's kind of just looking to offload it. So she's not like super old or anything, she's a little older than us. But yeah, just kind of looking to free up her time basically. So kind of everything felt like it added up and made sense in that sense. So again, we weren't like super worried about the transition or like what was going on or what was true or wasn't true necessarily. We knew there would be probably some things, but overall it's been pretty positive.
No, that's great. What happened during diligence? What were some of the things that you guys were concerned about, or that you dug in more during diligence?
Yeah, honestly, like nothing like super surprising came up, or it's like nothing that like spooked us by any means. We got like a QOV done, all the numbers came back, lined up, made sense. Um, everything's through Toast, so it's pretty straightforward. That matching up to bank statements and tax returns. We're all good to go. Background checks on everyone. All that came back clear, and like the managers and everything. So, yeah, diligence honestly was pretty straightforward, not too bad. Everything was pretty clean. I would say, yeah, I can't even honestly think of like anything that was like super odd or weird that came up, but yeah.
I guess when it comes to coffee shops, is there anything, for other people listening to this who, may be interested in buying a coffee shop as well, any specific sort of coffee or any coffee shop specific items that you would recommend diligencing now that you just went through the process?
Yeah, so probably the biggest, I guess, was where are you getting your beans from? So most coffee shop you're either a coffee shop or like you're a roaster and actually like buying the beans from somewhere and then locally roasting them or roasting them wherever. So that person where we're getting our beans from is local and actually owned one of the shops like previously, and then the old seller bought it from this guy. But because he was growing like the roasting side of the business, and they had like a really good pricing structure like set up on that side, and he was like willing to honor that and like sent over like a signed contract like beforehand. This was still in like the LOI phase. So that was really encouraging and good. And then all the other like vendors are kind of just like your typical like food vendors and bigger vendors, and we knew we could basically keep all the pricing the same on that side. And then employee wise, like we talked with the two managers and met with them ahead of time and a few different times. We knew they were willing to stay on, like same pay. So like all those like cost, all the expenses, that was like all making sense and like basically going to stay the same. So I think that was probably the biggest part is you see these Starbucks and other big coffee chains, they're doing 1 million plus per unit probably, or some other ones doing like 750. It's like, we don't have to do that. We could do 4 to 600,000 per location revenue wise and still be pretty profitable. If expenses are kind of kept in check and like keeping those margins in check. Really for us, it came down to like, what are the leases, and then employee wages. We're in Iowa, so it's cheaper than most places. And so I guess I'm saying those revenue numbers, but like New York, you probably got to do 1 million a shop, otherwise you could be hurting. But like some of our leases were like $3,000 a month, 3,300, 3,500, nothing crazy. Like the one big one that's like 8 grand is like in the university area, and that one does the best. So that, and then the employee wages aren't too bad because we use Toast and they can do like tip pooling, and they get quite a few tips like per hour that they all split, that basically ends up making their like hourly wage like way better. So but also keeps costs down for us. So kind of just like diving in and understanding all of those things and like what would change or what wouldn't change. And kind of once we got a good grasp on that, we weren't too afraid of it. But
You mentioned the managers. It's great that you were able to like speak to the managers and actually, interview them, make sure they wanted to stay and wanted to make and were comfortable getting paid the same. Is there anything you're doing to kind of incentivize them to stay involved and continue helping you run the business?
yeah, so the way it kind of shook out is like she had moved to Dallas and like she was coming back a decent amount, but then like she slowly stopped. So like when we met with them, like we could feel that like they were actually like really excited to have someone local and have someone like helping them, but like they were doing everything, right? Like not just like managing the shop. They're running the business. Like those two are like doing everything essentially, all their own socials, all their, managing the employees and like even like maintenance-y items like around that should probably be hired out, like they're just figuring it out and doing it, or things like that. And so that was like encouraging, is like, we actually felt like we could come in and not have to be like super a part of like the day to day and like work on the business instead of in it, what everyone's trying to do basically. And right now we're kind of just keeping everything as is. I think we will probably give them pay raises and incentivize them to stay on. One of them is definitely like super duper good, and I probably will promote them almost ASAP to be in charge of like all 4 shops and be more of like a head of ops sort of thing. So yeah, we'll definitely make sure they don't leave us.
Yeah.
That could be bad, but other than that, it's looking good. So
And did you buy the business because you thought consistent cash flows, or did you see some great sort of like growth opportunities with the business?
definitely some growth opportunities. I saw, like I said, she wasn't local, and just like things that you could go and clean up. Like the branding's not great by any means, so we're gonna like rebrand, change the name. All the shops could use like a little refresher, and just like all these like easy opportunities I saw, and like things like we were good at, like on the marketing side, the branding side. Just having things be kind of clean and modern, and in that sense. We saw as like an opportunity because yeah, like I said, that's kind of like what we're good at and what we did with the venue and kind of word of mouth and getting things going like that. But like with that being said, they're still doing pretty good as is. So I feel like that was encouraging of just like we definitely could make these better. There's probably like one other like local brand that has like some brand staying power, like local shop. Otherwise, it's just kind of like one-offs. So not like a ton of competition. Obviously, like you're competing with like the Starbucks and the Scooters and Dunn Brothers of the world, but those are kind of different models. They're all going towards like that ultra compact, like drive-through model versus like where like a true like coffee shop come in, like sit down, do your work, sort of thing. For the most part, we still have a couple of them at drive-throughs and things like that. But yeah, so definitely saw opportunities be different from like the big brands and then like just clean things up like in-house and rebrand and kind of grow that way. But definitely think we could go to a lot more locations locally and kind of really have somewhat of a local big brand staying power sort of thing eventually.
No, that all makes sense. That's very exciting. You mentioned you went through the SBA process. What was that experience like? How did you navigate that process? And is that what sort of you mentioned it took longer than you thought, or is more draining? Maybe was that sort of the SBA process, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, mostly the SBA process. It was fun. I had went down the SBA process before for the venue. Last minute, I ended up finding kind of another option where we like worked with our builder to help us like get a construction loan and then bought it back from them all through like a local credit union, thankfully. But so I thought I kind of knew, but this was like different. The bank we were working with ended up being like super backed up, like underwriter wise, and they were trying to like hire and outsource like other underwriters and like just like that, like to just gathering all the info and getting to the underwriter takes like a month. And like back and forth, tons of stuff, and then they request more stuff, and then they were like backed up, and I want to say it was like 2 months before they even got to like our file. So just there alone took forever. And then the seller on the flip side, she wanted to close like as fast as possible. So it was like dealing like with both those relationships and trying to like balance it all and make it make sense. But like I said, like we hadn't accepted LOI back in um like early April, I want to say, and we just now closed pretty much August. And I mean, the only reason it took that long was the bank. Like that was like the only thing slowing like literally anything down. Like we got our due diligence done in like a couple weeks time frame. But it was pretty much just all the lender and like waiting for them on when we could close. And even up until like the last week, like we didn't have like an official close date. They were like withholding that like date from us to like make sure like the last few things got in, which was just hard, like dealing with like vendors and like they're all asking like when the closing's happening because they'd all heard about it and like when the transfer over accounts and invoices and all that fun stuff. But I don't think it was like any one person's fault or anything. It's kind of just the process in general. We had like four landlords, right? So, they need like all these landlord like waivers to be signed, but then the landlords had to send it to their legal team and their counsel, and then they review it and they make like little tweaks and edits and they send it back to the bank and they're like just going back and forth, and that like all of a sudden burns like 2 weeks. It's just like
Yeah.
and they're like fighting over this like one little one pager document, and it's just like not fun. But so yeah, and then got my legal side, and then we raised money, so like then investors have their own legal and they're going back and forth on those deal docs, and everything was just a lot. And I knew that going in, but I feel like you never know until like until you're in the middle of it basically. But
And
um
you're running other businesses simultaneously. What did that time commitment look like for you, going through this SBA process? You mentioned your diligence only took a couple of weeks, but throughout this entire time, how many hours were you spending, and what were you spending most of your time on?
Yeah. This took up almost all my time. I'd say this is pretty much my full-time job. The last 4 or 5 months is just like getting this deal closed and gathering everything and dealing with the investors and lawyers and accountants. Um, Luckily, like I'm in business with my wife, and she's kind of always been more on the ops side at the venue. I mean, we did like everything together, but she's kind of like always been a little bit more of her thing. And then once we hired a couple managers, they're both ladies, and they kind of naturally all just like work together. And I would say, I'm more bigger vision kind of side of things. I still go in like we go on Monday and have like a managers meeting at the venue. But after that, like the rest of the week, I was just focused on this basically. Other than like running around and doing some things here and there, but yeah, definitely hectic. And then we also have an almost 3-year-old and a 1-year-old now too at home. So that can get crazy too. And it's like a lot going on. That was for sure. But
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. A lot of moving pieces on your end. That's pretty crazy. You mentioned you raised money. What did that process look like? When did you start engaging investors? How did you sort of structure the deal, the terms with them, and what did that generally look like, that process?
yeah. So I found the deal. I kind of like I tweet about things, and I tweeted about it, and that's where they all came from. I wasn't asking for investors. They all just kind of DM'd me, like asking me if I was looking for investors, and I was like, I don't know yet, but maybe, sort of thing. And that's kind of how most of it just unfolded. It's some of the guys I talked to like previously before, just about either looking at like different venues or things like that, and some were just pretty much out of the woodworks from this. Um, but once I kind of talked about that, and then just kept them in the loop basically. And then once we got serious and actually started diving into like numbers and what that's going to look like, and yeah, we ended up raising 300 grand. So like I said, we bought it for 1.25. Our down payment ended up being roughly like 137, I think. After you add in like some working capital and then all the SBA fees and all that fun stuff. So we raised extra, so we had a little bit of a cash cushion, some more working capital, and then had like some cash to go in and remodel the spaces and kind of rebrand and change the brand and grow it that way. But that all went pretty well. Honestly, I floated all the cash up front. So 50, 60 grand with the legal fees, the QV, the earnest money down, all that stuff. But I ultimately ended up paying myself back. So technically I bought this like with $0 down of my own money, which was like part of what I negotiated with the investors and they were cool with. I ultimately ended up signing obviously the SBA loan. So I'm, personally guaranteeing everything. And if all goes south, my other businesses and everything could go down with it. But which was also part of the negotiation there. So yeah, I don't know if that answered everything, but
No, that's super helpful. And I guess, how did you pitch investors on the deal? Obviously, it was kind of you were very much so I guess sharing in public. So that attracted a lot of investor attention, which is super smart. But did you eventually sort of like properly pitch them with terms, or was it much more sort of casual?
it was definitely nice and casual, which I'm glad I didn't want to go through like a huge raise. Like I said, I've been and seen the VC tech world, just nonstop capital raising side of things. And I honestly didn't know if I ever even wanted to raise capital. And I still didn't even know when I was looking at this deal. It just ultimately, I probably could have did it myself. It just ultimately made more sense. But yeah, pretty casual. I kind of just my thing on Twitter has always been like sharing all my venue numbers and that thing is kind of I got like a decent following there, nothing crazy. But I think just having that and being open on there, I feel like they kind of already felt like they knew me and been following me for a while, so they kind of wanted to in on what I was doing next. So there, yeah, it was all pretty casual. I put the performer together and things like that, sent them over all the numbers and everything I've collected, like on the sale too, and shared it with them. But yeah, there was no like huge uh like rhyme or reason or anything. Basically, I think it was basically like we were buying it for like 1.25. I just went like $1 million valuations, like 100 grand, basically got them like 10%. So whatever down, some of them did like 25 grand, some did more, sort of thing. So I just kept it like super simple, just straight equity, no yeah, like no like GPLP split kind of thing, like that. And I think everyone was kind of just on board, and it was pretty that was pretty simple. The actual like raising or getting them to commit wasn't the hard part by any means, thankfully. And I can owe that all to Twitter and X basically. So
No, that's super smart. And sometimes keeping, oftentimes like people offer like a preferred return, and there's like the GPLP split, and then there's an accelerator return of principal, then the pref. And I think there are a lot of investors who that's like way too complicated for them as well. So no, it's good to hear that you went with a more simplified approach. I mean, with you, are you taking a salary from the business, or are investors gonna get paid back first? You guys all just like kind of pro rata um, depending on how much equity you own, or how's that working out?
Yeah, so it'll be pro rata. I do have a salary, basically for being running the company. But in my head, I'm like holding that almost as like a placeholder, so I then can like eventually hire like a real like COO, and I'd probably just use that and then just take my dividends or set of things, depending how it shakes out and how we grow. But yeah, so just pro rata, we all kind of just get equal. Honestly, I'll probably try to give them more, a bigger cut and try to get their money back like ASAP. But no one really pushed back on it too much. It was pretty, again, pretty even and seemed pretty fair, I feel, across the board. But yeah, just try to keep it as simple as possible. I did go down like the rabbit hole of like raising capital to build another venue and getting deep in the GP splits, and we had a lawyer lined up and kind of going through those and what that would look like, and it was just like this is too much, like it's so more complicated, and then
Yeah.
have it like the GP doesn't even end up making that much money, or you're just like trying to get the fees up front basically, and like it just was not what I wanted to do, so I kind of like was upfront about that like early on. It's just like I just want this to be like super simple and like let's just if you believe in this and like believe in me and like growing the company and the concept, let's just do straight equity and kind of go from there. So
No, that makes sense. Are your investors looking, would you say that investors who are backing you, are they looking for cash flow? Are they looking for some exit down the line? Like, how did you, what is sort of like the goal there?
yeah, I think mostly cash flow. Everyone maybe is thinking maybe an exit at some point if it makes sense. I don't think anyone's looking for some huge exit, but what the numbers are doing now, like I said, is like doing like 500K in EBITDA. We had to put some debt on that, but like hopefully if things just stay as is, even if we reinvest a lot, like the time to get their capital back like isn't super long or anything. I think it's more of like a cash flow kind of game for them. I feel like I know one in particular is deep into like the real estate side, and obviously not many deals going on that. So I feel like he's looking for something else to kind of get into. But I think it's kind of a mix of both, so like a company that could grow, to a decent size. Let's say if we got the 10, 20, 30, 25, 30 locations or something, like a bigger company could come scoop us up for a decent return, I'm sure. Or we could just keep it and kind of grow cash flow wise too if we keep things in check. So
No, that makes sense. I know it's only been a week, but since you guys closed the deal, but anything unexpected, or has everything kind of turned out the way you kind of expected it to go?
yeah, it's only been a week, so I'm sure there's gonna be more. But I think first few days were stressful, just like we're using Toast and like making sure like Toast like got transferred over, and it did, and like they're helpful and like helping us out, but like they like act like they could just copy and paste like her toast to mine toast, and like it didn't work out that way, and like all the settings and preferences and people's like admin things are like all changed, and just basically every single one had some sort of problem in dealing with that. So that was fun, and now we're kind of like getting down to the nitty gritty, like into the nitty gritty, and there's obviously like there's some culture problems and employee drama, and getting into to the weeds on that, which you can expect, but you just don't know what you don't know. So I'd say, yeah, it's probably the most unexpected part is just hearing some of that and kind of getting into the drama of it all, which we don't want to be in, but here we are. So
Yeah, no, speaking of the drama of it all, are you planning, you mentioned you're planning to hopefully bring on like a general manager or someone to become the operator of the business eventually. What's your sort of plan there? Are you planning to kind of run the business for a period of time, or you looking to bring someone on pretty soon? Seems like you've done that for your other businesses. You have some experience doing that, but love to hear sort of your plan there.
yeah, I think um I don't have an exact plan, I guess. I want to always be involved in some capacity. It's just like, what is that capacity and what makes sense? If I know myself, I'm actually probably not, I wouldn't call myself like a COO, like a true, like deep in the ops kind of world. So I feel like I need to find my person to be able to do that. And I'm cool being like CEO for a while or whatever. I wouldn't even call it CEO. It's not even big enough company yet for that, but kind of the head on that side. And then if it ever made sense and we got big enough, I would be open to like hiring a CEO as well. But yeah, I mean, we have like the venue, we have the coffee shops now, we have a baby boutique, do like a marketing company. So basically I ended up creating like a holding company or in the process of doing that. So I could see something, um, at the group level too. A lot of them are like local, so we're gonna kind of like hire thing like we're gonna basically have like a full-time like maintenance construction person like help us with like all the general contracting on the coffee shop remodel side, and then you have the venue too, and I'll put it at like the holding company and like split cost accordingly down the line. So like, kind of keep it doing like things like that and just finding like the right people kind of in the right place sort of thing. So um I wouldn't say I'm just gonna like hire a full operator and just be hands off. Definitely not the case. Just to what capacity and day-to-day role I will have down the line, I don't know. But for a while, definitely gonna be in the nitty-gritty until we kind of rebrand, get our feet going, making money, and uh yeah, we'll go from there. So
Fun projects though. I think rebranding and remodeling a space and stuff is always maybe to me, but fun. So
yeah, I
that's
think
super
that is the
exciting.
fun part, right? It's like that's what we kind of enjoy, me and my wife, and that'll be fun. But it's just also dealing with the stress of the actual operations. But I mean, knock on wood, like you said, it's only been a week, but I mean, we're not like back there making coffee or anything right now, or having to do any of that. I wouldn't even know.
You're doing podcasts. It's really
Yeah, I'm
good.
doing
So
podcasts. It's Thursday at 2 o'clock, so life's not too bad or too stressful. Yeah, honestly, I couldn't even get back there and make coffee right now. I wouldn't even know how.
hey,
Yeah,
that's a good thing, right? That's a
it's,
good thing.
it's a good thing. Yeah, it's like I need to find where we want that balance to be. Because like the venue, we were like the first two people. We did everything ourselves. We built the space, we planned it out. We like designed this bar when we had no idea what we're doing, buying the equipment. But now I go into these coffee shops and I'm like, I don't even know what that piece of equipment does, but that's okay. I guess I own it. I don't know. Um, but so I think we need to educate ourselves probably more than we are now, but also like it's maybe not a bad thing to like not and like just have to delegate and find the right people to be in the stores running things day to day. So that's kind of like my thought with like having someone overseeing all of them. Like it's nice there's two managers overseeing two each, and they're both dependable and great. But I think it would be nice to have someone even like another layer in there too, especially as we grow to 5, 6, 7, hopefully 8, 9,
Yeah.
10 shops. So
No, that makes sense. Sounds like, you're planning on growing these locations,
yeah.
growing the holding company. Are you, I guess, you started businesses now, you bought businesses. Do you see more acquisitions down the line? Will this be your only one? Any sort of thoughts there? Maybe it's too soon, but love to hear sort of how this experience has gone compared to starting a business, maybe.
Yeah, I would say it was a lot. But it was also a lot because we already had so much going on, right? Like if this was all I was doing and like versus like starting the venue, this was definitely easier. And I think I definitely see more acquisitions in our future. And we're not opposed to starting, but starting's hard. It's really, really hard. And even after you do both of them, then you like really realize that more now. Like the different challenges, it's like nice you get to create and like start everything from scratch, and that's like your thing and your big passion. Like I can see that making a lot of sense. Um, and then, buying is like we're coming in now, we have to like deal with existing drama and cleaning things up and like all of that. So it's a different challenge in general. But I think I see why so many people talk about it and like it makes sense. Like we can make, making money like day one versus just like burning tons and tons of money trying to get started. And if you ever do. The venue is like a little different. Thankfully, like we could take deposits for like weddings happening like a year, 2 years down the road. So I had that like cash flow coming in. So I didn't like feel that like hard stress of like having no cash and trying to get started. Because we got a lot of bookings right away. But yeah, so two very different things. I definitely probably see more in our future. My wife would probably kill me if she hears this or is talking about it like a week after already. But um, I think it makes sense. And like at some point too, then you can like I was kind of alluding to it earlier, like we can centrally like look at like all of our resources, across multiple companies, and like it just makes sense. Like sometimes the bigger you get, the more people you can basically hire and afford to hire and like delegate and get better talent in there. So I think that'll kind of be like our next stage is like hiring like real talent, like real people like that know more than we do. Hopefully getting someone that even knows coffee better than we do in there or something. Um, is kind of where my headspace is at.
No, especially since it seems like all your businesses are local to where you are in Iowa, right? So
Yep, yep, yeah. So yeah, then it makes it easier for now. So
no, that makes a lot of sense. Look, I know we're, about to come up at time, but would love to just kind of get any sort of final words of wisdom from especially those listening who are going to be listening to this, who are maybe like first time buyers, any advice, tips, or anything like that.
yeah, I mean, just go for it. Like, just do it. Just figure it out. Like, I would say I would like to think I knew what I was doing, but I had no idea. Like I just figured it out. Like, I hadn't hired a lawyer for something like this. I hadn't done any like the deal docs and raised capital technically. In that sense, we did some like family and friends capital for the venue, but like just very small amount and like super casual. So like this was like a whole different beast. And then, yeah, I didn't know. I had never done like a Q of E and like managing that process or like really, I'd never bought a company, obviously. So, yeah, just kind of dive in. It did obviously help that I already owned and operated a company before I just went and bought a company. I could see that experience being like completely different. So I knew what we are getting ourselves into in some way. And there's a lot of similarities. But yeah, if you're a first time buyer, you just find just just go for it. Just make it make sense, don't force the numbers, trust your gut. And really don't worry so much about every like little thing or knowing every little thing or all these acronyms and terms and blah blah blah. Like just do it and figure it out. Use Google. Like find
Underrated.
just yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I love that advice. And if people want to, reach out to you after listening to this, what's the best way to find you, Alex?
Yeah, Twitter, I am wedding venue guy, which I maybe need to change my handle. I don't know. But
Wedding venue guy or coffee guy?
yeah, right.
Coffee
Slash
shop
cover
guy? Love
guy.
that.
Yeah, I might just drop it and just have my name as the thing and not choose. I'll keep my username, but uh whatever. You can find me on Twitter there. It's probably the best. You can check out my companies if you want. The venue is the Midnight Gem, midnightgem.com, and then the coffee company is coffeeemporiumia.com. We will be rebranding to Midnight Coffee. So um
Love that.
stay tuned. Yes.
I can't wait. We'll have to have you back a couple months from now and hear how everything's going. So I'm
Yeah,
very, very
definitely.
excited for you. But I love catching you sort of a week in. Thank you for
Yeah,
being so generous with your time. I'm sure you
of
have a
course.
million other things you're worrying about right now, but thank you for taking the time. I always love it, interviewing people right after when the experience is still fresh. So no,
Hey,
this
no,
is
I watched a lot of your podcasts like as I was like in the process of buying. So like I really like enjoyed and loved like hearing other people's stories and their journeys, and it kind of was comforting in some ways. So yeah, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, Alex, thank you again. And yeah, we'll be in touch and can't wait to hear how Midnight Coffee is doing, 3 to 6 months from now, I guess.
Yes, we shall see. Thank you.